I'm Michelle from CREPE Blooms. Today I'm going to be teaching you how to make some simple foliage like these leaf branches. These are great fillers to add to a bouquet. Pairing these with some of my previous tutorials, like the peony for example, will just add a little bit more depth to your display. Once you get to the stage that you're going to start making bouquets with your flowers, having some greenery is a really good way just to bulk it out without being too complicated. Also, once you've learned how to make a basic leaf such as this, then you're good to go with most other types of leaves as well. Once you have a template, the technique is generally always the same. So this is a great way to learn how to make leaves, and then you can go ahead and make all sorts of different ones in the future. So the first thing we need to do is cut out our leaf shapes. So I'm using this green crepe paper, which is a heavyweight crepe, and it's from the Leah Griffith range at Werribee. So the first thing I'm going to do is take my templates, which you can download from the link below this video. It's a free template which you can get from my website, which is tarmuchleepaperblooms.com. As I say, there'll be a link below the video. Make sure that you stretch your crepe paper all the way out. Pay attention to the grain line on your paper. So there will be 3 little lines on the template, and that's the direction of the grain line. That's really important because those grain lines will act as the veins on your leaves, so it makes it look a lot more natural. Then you want to cut on your wire for each of the leaves. So I'm using a 20 gauge paper covered wire here. If you don't have any 20 gauge wire at the moment, then just go with whatever you have at home. And you need to measure that so that it starts about 1 centimetre from the top of the leaf, and you have at least 3 or 4 centimetres of overlap at the bottom. You can leave this longer to start with if you prefer as well. So I'm prepping for all 7 of my leaves all at the same time, just to speed things up. Then the next stage is to go in and add the glue. So I'm using tacky glue here, and I'm just applying it in dabs with a cocktail stick. So I'm just working my way along the edge of the leaf, just adding a very small dab of glue each time, and then I'm taking my wire and pushing that down onto the leaf, starting about 1 centimetre from the top, and that's right on the edge of the paper. And I'm going to do all 7 at the same time, just so it gives the glue a chance to go tacky. Then I'm going to go back to the first one that I glued, and I'm going to add extra glue onto the top of the wire this time. And it's just a very thin layer of glue that you want. And once you've covered all the way along the wire, then you just slowly want to roll around the edge of the paper to cover the wire. So this can be quite fiddly, but what you're trying to do is to just roll it very gently, just so that it covers the edge of the wire and gives you a nice crisp line to work with. And you can just fold over the top piece of paper to line up with the edge of the wire. Then just make sure it's all fully stuck down and just smooth out any wrinkles. And again, I'm going to repeat that for all 7 leaves. So next we want to take the other half of the leaf, and we're going to attach that onto the glued stem. So turn the glue over so it's away from you, and then bring in the other piece to line up with it. You want to make sure that you've got a V shape formed from the grain of the paper, so that should be a V pointing towards the bottom of the leaf. Once that's in about the right position, then just push that down and make sure the paper is stuck to each other. You can then go in and trim off any excess paper just to get a nice shape. Next we want to wrap each of the wires with a small piece of floral tape. So I'm adding a small bit of glue at one end of the tape and then attaching that part way up the stem. And then as I'm wrapping that, I'm pulling that really tight and stretching out the tape as well to activate the glue that's inside. And then I'm just going to roll that between my 2 fingers and pull it tight with the other hand. When you get to the bottom, just add a small piece of glue again and then just twist that and it will break off on its own. If you're left with a thin point of tape that's just been wrapped around at the bottom, just leave that on, because when you come to attach the leaves, that will help to just smooth out any joints in your wire, so you won't end up with any big lumps on the finished stem. Once you've finished each of your leaves, you then want to cut some wire for your main branch, and I would recommend that you use something thicker for this, so either a 16 or an 18 gauge wire. And you just want to cover that in the same floral tape as you've used for all of your leaves. So now it's time to attach all our leaves to the main stem. So first of all, I want to take the two smallest leaves, and then I'm going to attach those together with the front faces touching, and I'm just going to add a blob of glue to the stem and then wrap that really tightly with some floral tape. You can break off your floral tape and do it in small sections if you want, or you can just keep rolling it and adding more as you go, as I'm doing here. And I'm just making sure to wrap that really tightly, and then I'm adding in the next size of leaf, just moving down slightly by maybe ½ centimetre or a centimetre each time, and continuing to wrap that tightly as I go. And I'm just adding more and more leaves until I've added all 7 of them. You can actually do more than 7 if you want, but I do recommend doing an odd number because it looks a lot more natural if it's not symmetrical. Make sure as you're adding the leaves that you have them so that they're facing inwards, because then when we come to arrange the stem later, they'll fold down so that they're pointing upwards. So you want the bottom of the leaf to be sticking outwards at this stage. Once you've added all of your leaves, then you want to take the main stem and then add that at the base of the bottom leaf. You're trying to get it so that there's not a big lump in the finished stem. So try to position your wires so that there's not any big overlaps. This is where having the extra bit of tape on the end of your wire helps, because it just makes that transition more gradual. And then you want to continue the floral tape all the way down to the bottom of the stem, add some little bits of glue along the way as you go, and then go back in with a second piece of floral tape, again with some glue at either end, and just even out any lumps in the stem and make sure that it's a similar thickness all the way down. You might need to wrap a few layers around the stem to even these out. Now we can go back in and fold down each of the branches. So start at the bottom one and just ease that down gradually, and then just work your way around. You ideally want to space them randomly so that they fill any gaps. Try not to make them too symmetrical. Once you have the branches themselves in the right place, you can then start to manipulate the leaves. So you can bend these in all sorts of directions, which is the beauty of having them wired. But in particular, you want to make sure there's a nice curve on the actual leaf, so you can just push that up with your fingers. If you've used a thin wire, that'll be a lot easier, but equally the branch will be a bit flimsier too. So this is where if you've got something in the mid-range, it helps because you've got flexibility, but equally it's not too hard to bend the wires. If you're using something like a 16 gauge wire at this stage, you'll still be able to create the same effect, but you might just find it a bit harder to bend the wires. So you'll just need to put a bit more pressure on as you're bending them. Okay, so there you have your basic leaf technique. Hopefully you've got a couple of branches that you can add to any bouquets you've got on the go. You can go ahead and make all sorts of different leaves now using the techniques that you've learned today. I'd love to see how you get on, so if you do make any, please share them with me on Instagram at @talmuchley_paperblooms, and you can use the hashtag #talmuchleypaperblooms. I'd love to share your work and how you've been getting on. Talmuchley for being here to celebrate the special moments with me.